Now, Syria's President Bashar al-Assad says foreign interests are plotting to destroy his country.
Speaking in Parliament for the first time since last month's elections, he also paid tribute to civilian military martyrs. Dr. Anthony Billingsley is a Middle East expert from the University of New South Wales, and he joins us now from Sydney. Good morning. Thanks for your time. Should we be surprised by anything President Bashar al-Assad had to say?
I guess the confrontational tone was, well, disappointing, I suppose, rather than surprising. He seemed to be really saying that he had no real interest in the Assad plan anymore.
And it comes at a time where he's acknowledged that the Hula massacre took place, but he's called it an ugly crime that not even monsters would have carried out.
That's right. He's pushing this line very strongly that everything that's going wrong in Syria is from outside sources. And whilst there is some evidence that weapons and things like that are coming from Saudi Arabia, perhaps Qatar, I don't think there's much doubt in the minds of most observers that it was forces related to the government that committed that massacre.
There has been some talk that at the moment in Syria this is actually a bit, that in terms of the fighting, things have quietened down somewhat, and that it's actually quite a scary time in that the forces are regrouping and rearming themselves before a stronger offensive takes place.
Well, there did seem to be a lull until the Hula massacre took place. We're all starting to look elsewhere, I guess. Perhaps there is a build-up of forces and reserves, I don't know. But yes, you're right, there was a bit of a lull.
And what about the violence that's spread into Lebanon now?
Well, Lebanon, of course, is always caught up with the problem. It's a mutual issue. Problems in Lebanon spill into Syria and vice versa. In Tripoli, in the north of the country, you have quite a large Alawi population, and of course they relate to what's going on across the border. And we saw scenes last night on television of considerable violence affecting Tripoli in particular.
And the international response, we saw it somewhat galvanised last week after the Hula massacre. But what difference can the UN make when it comes to President Bashar al-Assad?
Well, we've got the Human Rights Council condemning in strong terms what the Syrians have done. It was a strong vote. Only Russia, China and Cuba, I think, voted against that resolution. The Security Council seems to be stalemated. The Russians and the Chinese have made clear they're not going to allow a resolution that would impose any serious sanctions against the regime. I wonder, in that sort of circumstance, why the West doesn't refer to the General Assembly. You have the possibility under what's called the Uniting for Peace resolution if the Security Council is stalemated, for the General Assembly to take over issues of international peace and security. And it could be that that might be a way of putting pressure on the Russians and the Chinese to be more accommodating in terms of Security Council action.
You have the international peace envoy Kofi Annan saying that he's increasingly frustrated that Bashar al-Assad isn't turning his words into actions. So if the General Assembly or if the UN doesn't act by using the General Assembly, what else can the international community do?
Not a lot. The problem, and the French have made this clear, that they believe that some sort of military action or some sort of very firm action by the international community is necessary. But they insist it must be legal, which means it has to be through the Security Council or through the General Assembly and Uniting for Peace.
Dr. Anthony Billingsley, thank you for your time this morning.
You're welcome.